In your job, you use chemicals for cleaning and sanitizing purposes every day. Chemicals help keep your facility and the food you handle free from contaminants that affect the quality of your product and the health of consumers. But when used improperly, chemicals pose a risk to the environment, your coworkers, and you. That's why it's important to understand what chemicals you use and what precautions to take when using them. Every chemical is required to have a label that identifies the chemical and any hazards it might pose, but reading and understanding that information is up to you. The easiest way to get information about the chemicals you use is to check the label. So before you use any chemicals, make sure you read and understand the information on the label. Labels contain the same types of information you'll find on an SDS, but in less detail. For example, an Ecolab label will state what type of chemical you're using and what personal protective equipment or PPE you should use. Your employer is responsible for having the chemical containers in your workplace labeled, and it's your responsibility to notify your supervisor if a label is unreadable or missing. Remember, an unlabeled chemical is always hazardous. A label includes specific types of information. The first thing you should look for on a label is the product identifier, so you know exactly what chemical you're using. The product identifier includes the name or brand name of the chemical as well as the product descriptor. The signal word will tell you the level of hazard severity of the chemical. For severe hazards, the signal word is danger. For less severe hazards, the signal word is warning. The type, nature, and degree of the hazards associated with the chemical are described in the hazard statement. And pictograms depict any physical, health, or environmental hazards that apply to the chemical. There are 9 different pictograms. They're always a black symbol on a white background surrounded by a red diamond-shaped border. If you're not familiar with a certain pictogram, ask your supervisor. The precautionary statement describes actions that should be taken to keep yourself and others safe while using or storing the chemical. This could include what types of PPE are required to safely use the chemical. And the supplier identification includes the name and contact information of the supplier, manufacturer, or importer of the product. Ecolab also uses color coding on labels to convey information about the chemical. For instance, alkaline cleaners are green, while acid products are dark pink or red. These colors correspond to the Ecolab Emergency Chart, a tool that provides first aid, PPE, and other necessary product information. Containers of chemicals that enter your workplace have labels that are supplied by the manufacturer or importer. But if you fill any small secondary containers with chemicals from larger ones, you are responsible for labeling them. Don't neglect to label a container just because you think you're the only one using it. A chemical incident could easily happen if a container is not properly labeled and someone else uses the chemical incorrectly. Ecolab bulk product storage and labeling have additional requirements and training. Your supervisor or Ecolab representative can answer any questions you may have about bulk chemicals. Thank you for your attention during this course. Let's review for a moment the topics we covered. Labels contain important information about the chemicals you use every day. Before you use a chemical, check the label and make sure you understand it. Look for the product identifier. It includes the name of the chemical and its product descriptor. The hazard statement, pictogram, and signal word describes hazards associated with using the chemical as well as the severity of the hazards. Precautionary statements cover what actions to take and what PPE is required when using the chemical. And make sure you label any secondary containers you use. Remember, any unlabeled chemical is considered hazardous.